This meeting of Norwood City Council is hereby called to order. Please rise for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father, who art in heaven, as a body we congregate in these council chambers. We pray for thy divine guidance, that we may do all things well, according to thy holy will. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bonzall. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mrs. Stickley.
Here.
Mr. Blair.
Here.
Mrs. Hannerhan.
Here.
Mr. Sanker.
Here.
Mr. Mumper.
Here.
We do have, 6 members present, so we will proceed. We have no amendments to the agenda.
Wow.
Move on
I
to...
move we adjourn.
I'm sure we could come up with something, right? We have the minutes from the June 14th, 2016 meeting. Which pleasure. Mr. Sanker.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve them, but I did have one question. When the one gentleman was speaking, that was noted, and Mrs. Hanrahan, I thought she said that you didn't think his comments were meant to be offensive.
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, well, then the way it was stated, then it's fine. I just misunderstood. So,
As I recall, it was correct.
I
Mrs.
said I
Sanker.
agree with him.
with the gentleman speaking?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a second? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley. Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hannerhan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumper.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We have a request to address council on items, but not on the agenda items. So we'll move on to reports of standing committees of council. The first is the Housing, Health, and Recreation Committee regarding beekeeping and miscellaneous zoning issues. Mrs. Hanrahan?
Committee report, Housing, Health, and Recreation dated June 20th, 2016. To the Honorable Council of the City of Norwood, Ohio, we, your Committee of Housing, Health, and Recreation, review what's referred beekeeping and miscellaneous zoning issues. Beg leave to submit the following report. The committee reports out beekeeping and requests it be added to the next Committee of the Whole meeting. Request a resolution adding no front yard play equipment to our zoning. Respectfully submitted Marilyn Hanrahan, Chairperson, Brandon Blair, James Bonzo, and Tammy Sleeper.
Mr. Mumper?
I move the committee report be accepted.
Seconded by Mrs. Stickley. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hannerhan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumper.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Before we move on to readings of ordinances, I failed to acknowledge that in our audience tonight, there are 4 Boy Scouts and 2 leaders who are from Troop 9 who are working on a communications badge. So their hope is that we will have a discussion of more than one opinion. So I have every confidence in you that we can have a discussion about something so that the troop can write their summary report. So they're hoping that we can discuss something that has more than one point of view. So we will, and welcome, by the way. Thank you for being here. We'll move on to second reading of ordinances. It's second reading of resolutions. It's the resolution adopting the 2017 tax budget. Mr. Sanker.
Madam President, I recommend we have the second reading.
Seconded by Mr. Mumper. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hannerhan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes.
Mr. Mumper.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Please have the second reading.
Resolution adopting 2017 tax budget.
We'll move on to introductory readings of resolutions. And we have one, a resolution requesting the City of Norwood Planning Commission to consider amendments to the Planning and Zoning Code prohibiting play structures in front yards and declaring an emergency. Mr. Clark,
I'd move that we suspend the rules and have all three readings of this resolution.
seconded by Mrs. Hanahan. Is there any discussion? Mr. Sanker.
Yes, Madam President. The letter through the chair to the chairman of the Housing Committee. This resolution is per your request in your committee report, requesting that the Planning Commission review the current zoning for front yard, playground equipment, and for them to review that, see if changes can be made.
Prohibiting, we would like to see, we would like to prohibit the, or like to send to them prohibiting front yard structures. There was an issue in South Norwood, and the building commissioner said it was not a structure, because that's how the ordinance was written. So we would like it to be clarified, this is a huge piece of play equipment. We have had complaints from neighbors. We feel that this could negatively affect property values and the aesthetics of the neighborhood, and we would just like it clarified in our zoning.
Is there any other discussion? Mr. Sanker, you okay? Or you have another question?
Yeah, just follow up if I may.
Absolutely.
Through the chair. So when this goes to the Planning Commission, they will then review this and they will make their recommendations to, as far as prohibiting or making changes to the zoning. And then I believe at that point in time, we'd have to, before we could change the zoning, I believe we would have to have a public hearing
That's correct.
to change the zoning. So, I believe that this isn't something that will happen tomorrow, but it is something that, by passing this, will ask the Planning Commission to review the zoning for these things and report back to council.
That's correct. Mr. Mumford?
Not on the issue, but can we check the mics? I don't think they're on.
You can hear mine. Can you hear, can somebody ask that again so to see if we can hear?
Can we have the mics checked?
I think they're on now.
I'm assuming that they're probably working
Can you hear me now?
through the TV, but not now. You can. Okay. John, say something again, John.
Hello? Hello?
Can you hear now?
That's better.
Okay.
If you talk directly in, here, okay.
Can you hear me now, Steve?
So for what you didn't hear in the audience, there was discussion about what this resolution would do. Mrs. Hanahan had reported that there were some complaints made to her about a structure that was a play structure, as I understand it, that was put into a front yard in South Norwood. After that resident had contacted the building department, and they, per our current zoning code, the building commissioner was of the opinion that it was not considered a structure and therefore was allowed. And so what this resolution, if it passes, is asking to do is that the Planning Commission look at the current zoning and consider adding amendments that would indicate that a play structure is like a trampoline or swing set or jungle gyms, and as such would be considered a structure and therefore would not be allowed in the front yard. Is that succinct of the discussion that went on? And you can get a copy of this resolution. So what would happen is the information would go, the resolution will go to the Planning Commission. They would have to look at the zoning and make considerations. If they decided to change the zoning, they have to have a public hearing. Then they make a recommendation to council. We then would have to have a public hearing where we could hear from people in the community before anything is adopted. So that's just to clarify the process. So this resolution is asking the Planning Commission to begin that process. Is there any other discussion? The motion on the floor is to suspend the rules and have all three readings. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes.
Mr. Mumper.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Please have all three readings.
Resolution requesting the City of Norwood Planning Commission to consider amendments to the Planning and Zoning Code prohibited play structures in front yards and declaring an emergency. A resolution requesting the City of Norwood Planning Commission to consider amendments to the Planning and Zoning Code prohibiting play structures in front yards and declaring an emergency. A resolution requesting the City of Norwood Planning Commission to consider amendments to the Planning and Zoning Code prohibiting play structures in front yards and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mumper.
I move we pass the resolution.
Seconded by Mrs. Stickley. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumper.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. We'll move on to administration reports. Mr. Moore wishes to report on future commercial development matters.
Thank you, Madam President. I hope everybody can hear me and the mic's plugged in.
Doesn't sound like you're on.
No? No? Okay. I just wanted to give council an update on what's been going on. I sent an email a little while ago saying that you could expect some TIF legislation, possibly some PACE, some energy special improvement district legislation. We haven't gotten to the point where those documents are completely put together in a way everybody likes yet, but those should be coming soon. The TIF would basically take the increase in the property value from the construction, and the taxes on that would then go to pay off bonds, and the money from the bonds would be used to pay for the construction. What the TIF financing would be for is improvements to the parking garage right across the street. That parking garage is, 30 years old? And it needs a lot of work. The TIFs we've done in Norwood, and so we kind of have a form, those are pretty easy. The issue here seems to be the developers working out the deal with the school board. The other issue is the ESID, the Energy Special Improvement District, and under that, the property owner says, I would like you to add a special assessment to my property taxes. I want to pay extra property tax, and the money from that is used to pay back an investor who loans money to the owner to do energy improvements on the property. So that's lighting fixtures and new HVAC and insulation and windows and that kind of thing. Those documents are a lot more complicated, and the way it's written is much more complicated than the way it will actually work. I was hoping the auditor would be here and the mayor and kind of lay out some of the things I learned. It should work for, as far as the city's concerned, exactly the way a TIF works. We've done a number of those. Basically, we're just a pass-through. And we really don't do any of the paperwork or any of the heavy lifting. Those two are we kind of knew about those. Hopefully we'll have something soon. They want to get the work done soon. They've got people moving in. They want to get more moved in. The other one came up the meeting was yesterday. Mr. Gary, who's here tonight, and I had a phone conference with our bond counsel and a couple of people from a firm up in Columbus that do. They're municipal financial advisors is kind of the bulk of what they do, and they were working on a project for Grove City, and were surprised at the rates of return that they're getting on TIF bonds that they're refinancing, and so they started looking around and they contacted us because we have some that were issued in 2006, and they think we can get a better rate on them. Basically, just like refinancing your mortgage, and that frees up more money. Their rough estimates would be that it would free up, there's still some questions on exactly what that can be used for, but it would free up somewhere between, say, $80,000 and, $150,000 per year over the next 15 years, if everything goes the way they'd hoped. If we need to take a look more in depth into the details of the bonds that were issued and the details of the ordinances and the agreements, it may be that those, any savings like that it has to go to pay off the bonds early or to pay down the debt early. It may not be. If not, then that money then becomes available for use for public improvements related to that development. The development we're talking about is Cornerstone. So in theory, we might be looking over the next 15 years, 50, 80, 100, 120, $150,000 a year to use on public improvements around Cornerstone. So that can be streets, sewer, water, all those kinds of things around there. So they want to look into it, dig into it a little bit more. The next step for us would be to put together an agreement for them to come work for us. The terms of the agreement are they don't get paid unless we issue new bonds, unless we actually do the deal. And then they would be paid out of the proceeds of the deal. And the numbers that we might realize are net, their estimates are net after paying those costs. So I thought I would check to see with council and see if anyone has any objections to us getting a copy of that agreement letter, then we come and bring it to council. But as far as pursuing this, to potentially refinance those bonds from 2006 at a much better rate to free up more money for potentially some other projects. So if anybody's got objections or concerns or questions, of course, please let me know.
You might as well keep the mic. Mr. Mumford.
Yeah, question, would we have to put this out to bid?
To put the...
Does somebody to study to see if they can...
No, that wouldn't be apt to put. It's just, it's kind of like hiring legal counsel or bond counsel, that kind of thing. They would be our advisors to come in and work out a bond deal.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, through the chair to the law director. The bonds we're talking about now, as you stated, were from 2006 on that TIF agreement. Would any of the other TIF agreements that we have in other areas around the city not be as attractive because of the rate that we have on those bonds currently, or would they be something they would be interested in looking at as well?
Mr. Moore?
The rates, we have the rates of the bonds that we have under TIFs are really range. I think it goes from like 3.5% to like 7%, depending on when they were issued and the conditions that were going on. The big issue here is the call date. There's a date after which you can refinance. And we've got a couple anyway that are the developer bought the bonds. So, they're not really interested in repaying. They've got it. They could do that whenever, it's their money that's going around in a circle anyway. So, but yeah, that would be the next step. But these are the ones where the date is coming up would be by December of this year, would be the call date on these bonds. And so that's why they started reaching out to people.
Mrs. Stickler.
Madam President, to the law director, I might be confused, but does it extend the terms like it would in a mortgage? For instance, like if you refinanced a mortgage and you were on a 15-year, now you're on a 30-year, et cetera, does that happen the same with TIF bonds?
Mr. Moore?
That was exactly my question. And no, because it's the TIF is set up, the tax increment, the break on the taxes is under 30 years. So it would still be within that 30 years from when the bonds were issued. So they would be for refinance at 15-year notes.
Any other questions? So my understanding is you want to get an indication if there's any objections from anybody to at least pursue.
Correct, Madam President.
Mr. Sanker.
Madam President, I'd recommend that the law director pursue the possibility of refinancing the 2006 TIF bonds. I'd like
Is
to
that a
put
motion?
that in a form of a motion, yes, ma'am.
Seconded by Mr. Mumper. Is there any discussion? So the motion is to ask Mr. Moore to go ahead and pursue the potential for refinancing the TIF bonds as he described earlier. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanahan. Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumper.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Mr. Moore, is that all that you had?
Thank you, Madam President.
Now I can't get this to work. Great. Sorry. There we go. Is there any unfinished, we have other requests to address council, and we do have 3 requests. The first is Mike Nagy. Mr. Nagy, could you come up and give us your name and address, and then you have 5 minutes to address council.
My name is Mike Nagy. My address is 4947 State Route 46, West Harrison, Indiana.
I know where that is.
Good evening. I'm here on my own behalf, not on Rumpke's behalf, to speak about the trash noise ordinance that until recently had not been enforced. It currently states that no person, association, firm, or corporation shall during the hours from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. engage in or undertake any waste collection activity that produces loud noises so to disturb the peace and quiet of the neighborhood, having due regard for the proximity of places, residents, hospitals, or other residential institutions. Up until recently, I had been starting between 4 and 4:45 a.m. daily and would run the truck with the high-speed rev turned off until 7 a.m., having due regard for the residents' peace and trying to make as little noise as possible. I also had the safety of residents, children, and myself in mind by starting early to get out of everyone's way by the time work and school started. I've almost been run over on Montgomery Road and Carthage Road and have had really close calls with children wandering out in front of my 25-ton vehicle on Sherman, Elm, Williams, and Carthage. And luckily, I was paying close attention or it could have ended badly. I'd also try to beat the scrappers, which in some cases have made messes that I have cleaned up. I believe that the 4 a.m. start time was fair, considering that is what time the majority of Rumpke starts, and to my knowledge, other cities like Hamilton, Gulf Manor, and Middletown. Wait a minute. And Middletown exclude the trash pickup from the noise ordinance. We're only in our route areas once a week and usually only for a few minutes per stop. And I truly believe from a safety point of view that the benefits of starting early outweigh those of starting later, and you will never be able to please everyone. Fire, police, energy, and snow plows are exempt from the noise ordinance because they serve the public, but we also serve the public, and I would greatly appreciate if council would consider changing the ordinance to 4 a.m. so that the community remains safe and so that we remain safe and can try and beat the heat of the summer and inclement weather of the spring and winter. Thanks for your time and consideration.
Does anyone have any questions or comments of Mr. Nagy? Mrs. Hanrahan?
Thank you, Mr. Neely. Can you tell me how many trucks are out at one time?
I believe there's 4 or 5.
Okay. Does that include recycling or is that separate?
They're at a separate branch.
Okay.
The majority of our fleet, though, I'm probably one of the only ones that actually started early.
Okay.
So, I mean, not every single truck would most likely be out here at 4. It's just driver preference.
Thank you.
May I ask, you made reference that you turned off some high speed, whatever that means. The high speed, can you describe what that is?
Well, there's a switch on the truck that when you have it turned on, it revs the motor up to compact the trash in.
Okay.
And if you turn that off, it just sits there at idle speed and the trash compacts at idle speed. The only time it'll run up is when you pull up to the next stop. So you can kind of have that turned off so that when you're pulling up to the next stop, it can compact at a higher speed because you're moving.
Thank you. Mrs. Hanrahan?
We actually did discuss this in our housing meeting, and I would like to recommend that this be put in the law and ordinance to be looked at.
Motion? It's a motion to place this into law and ordinance?
Yes.
Is there a second to that? Mr. Sanker? Is there any discussion? So the motion is to place the matter of the start time of trash pickup into the Law and Ordinance Committee. Can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan?
Yes.
Mr. Sanker?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mumper?
Yes.
All members present voting aye, and motion carries. Will be placed in Law and Ordinance Committee. We do have your name and address on file. If you would like, we could send you a copy of whatever the Law and Ordinance Committee recommends.
Okay, so if it does change, they'll notify me or notify Rumpke?
We can notify you if that's what you want.
Okay, that'd be great. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you.
May I add something?
Yes.
You would also be allowed at that committee meeting to speak if you would like.
Okay, when is that?
And we'll also contact you.
Yeah, we'll contact you when the Law and Ordinance Committee is. Those are open meetings to the public, and they're less formal than these meetings are, so that you would be able to speak.
Okay. Do you need my number? Or
It's not on here. No. It's just the address.
We got it. We have
Okay.
your address.
great, thanks.
Thank you. Next is Pastor Sonny James.
Just in case. Pastor Sonny James, 1830 Hopkins Avenue, here in Norwood. First, before I get started, I want to commend our law department on the wonderful news that I just heard with Mr. Gary and Mr. Moore, looking at different options to find some funding relief for our community, and that is fabulous. And I pray that comes to fruition. Then I also want to just acknowledge the young men and women that are in our scouts and that have come out to represent what it is that they do and what they stand for. And as a resident of Norwood, I just want them to know how proud I am to see our young folks stepping up and being a part of an intricate part of what makes our city go. So great job. Now, with that being said, I have some fabulous news to report to all of Norwood. As most of you know, several months ago, I had issued a 13-point plan to the city to help address some of the volatile issues that we have been dealing with as a community. And again, I have over 30 years experience with this. But I am just so excited, and even for the viewers at home, if this does not make you right now stand up and applaud Norwood, I mean, you're just not from Norwood, or you just never come through Norwood, or maybe you don't even know how to say Norwood, because this is phenomenal. On May 27th, we partnered with our local YMCA, who agreed to open up the swimming pool. And then our ministry, we brought in kids from the community. We had over 300 folks that swarmed the YMCA. It was fabulous, phenomenal. Now the success is we didn't have not one single outbreak. That alone would be enough to celebrate. But just a couple of days ago, now we had kids that were playing video games, and we award through our ministry real-life championship belts to give these young folks something to look forward to. It's more than just playing video games. It's saying, hey, I can accomplish something. They walked out feeling like Mike Tyson. But the highlight of it, we got the fire department and our police department to agree to play basketball with some of our area youth. Now, guys, I'm just going to put it out there boldly. These are probably not some of the youth that probably are part of our scouts. They're probably not baking cookies on Friday and Saturday. These are the community folk, okay? We didn't have one outburst. Just a few days ago, and I can't mention all the details because I wasn't able to reach the officer again to get all of the details, but just a few days ago in Norwood, there was a police call where there was firearms involved. And when the officer showed up on the scene, and I mean, residents, if this doesn't make you shout, I don't know what to do. I'll pray for you. The officers get on the scene, and the young folks that had been playing basketball with them. Now, in our community, sometimes, some of the young folks kind of, a little mouthy when, authoritative figures show up. Well, the young folks said, whoa, wait a minute. Now, I'm paraphrasing. You can't do that, dog. Not with them. Hey, didn't you play with me? And the young folks said, whoa, wait a minute. You can't do that, dog. Not with them. Hey, didn't you play with me? And the young folks said, whoa, wait a minute. You can't do that, dog. Not with them. Hey, didn't you play with me? And the young folks said, whoa, wait a minute. You can't do that, dog. Not with them. Hey, didn't you play with me? And the young folks said, whoa, wait a minute. You can't do that, dog. Not with them. Hey, didn't you play with me? And the young folks said, whoa, wait a minute. You can't do that, dog. Not with them. Hey, didn't you play with me? And the young folks said, whoa, wait a minute. You can't do that, dog. Not with them. Hey, didn't you play with me? And the young folks said, whoa, wait a minute. You can't do that, dog. Not with them. Hey, didn't you play with me? And the young folks said, whoa, wait a minute. You can't do that, dog. Not with them. Hey, didn't you play with And the officer said, yeah, I remember you. So he looks to the other folks, and again I'm paraphrasing, and he says, no, we can't do this. They're with us. So the officer, not making an arrest, but looking at other options, says, listen, and I'm paraphrasing, we got to confiscate the firearm. Paraphrasing, the young folks says, within themselves, making a change, says, you come back in 15 minutes, look in the bush. The officer comes back. If this doesn't make y'all shout, I don't know what's wrong with you. Comes back, the firearm is there. I want to say that when we put these events together, it is so important that we come together as a community, because those young folks are realizing, hey, they're not against me. They just don't know. And so I want to celebrate all of you on council that support some of the things that we're trying to bring together. You know, I always challenge and say, you know, I know there's an issue with funding, but remember, we fed everybody. Everybody walked away with awards and gifts. We had a fantastic time, and the end result, no one in the community was injured, and our police officers showed up for work that day safe and healthy, and they returned to their families safe and healthy. If that's not enough to make Norwood shout hallelujah, I don't know what is. So I'm excited about it. On the 10th, we're going to do another event. It's not going to be as large scale as that, but I want to encourage you. And to the viewers, if you have young folks that might not be traditional, give me a call, PastorSonnyJames@gmail.com or 513-487-8843, and I promise you, we will get the butter from the duck. God bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's about as good as it's going to get. Thank you very much. Next is Adrian Jackson. And if you just come forward, give us your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address council. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Adrian Jackson. My address is 2031 Mills Avenue here in Norwood. Okay, thank you for allowing me to speak and share today. I wanted to speak, and I'm glad it was somewhat already addressed, for the kids and whomever else to have a place to recreate. I understand that there have been recently several basketball courts, for instance, that were closed down. As I understand it, and as I witnessed at the event that Pastor James was talking about on the 27th, that the kids love to play basketball. That's one of the things that they really like to do. And making funding available, alternate venues for them to play, and monitors available to monitor them will be appreciated. What happens when there's deprivation? What happens when a human is deprived of basic things that they like to do, basic needs? There was a study done where individuals deprived of food and light, exercise, recreation, and companionship. That individual was depressed, destructive, non-productive, and became very ill. When all those things was returned, they were happy, productive, and more healthy. The mind is an idle mind is the devil's playground. Okay. So consider how you'd feel if your favorite activity was taken, your basic needs, a therapeutic leisure activity that you might like to indulge in. For me as a child, basketball, I played basketball. All my brothers are 6'1" and above. We played basketball in grandma's backyard, wherever we can play, at high school, the corner playground, wherever we could play. That was just a release for us. I was much more leaner then. When I played ball for my high school, my grades increased. I knew I had a certain amount of time to do my homework, class time. practice and the games. So in that, it created discipline for me. So it's important. Having leisure activity and keeping your mind active is very important. So any support, funding, alternate venues, again, will be appreciated. And thank you again for allowing me to share.
Any questions or comments? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Mr. Sanker?
I know, Madam President, this came up at the last meeting, but down at Waterworks on July the 4th, the Fireworks Committee will be sending off the 4th of July with fireworks in the evening at, I believe it's 9 something. But there are going to be festivities down at Waterworks Park, throughout the day, live music, food, drinks, and companionship. And then the fireworks are Monday, July the 4th, down at Waterworks Park. Old business.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sanker. Any other unfinished business? Okay, we'll move on to new business. Any new business? Mrs. Hanrahan?
Hi. I would like to call a meeting for the Housing, Health, and Recreation for July 18th at 6:30, and this will be concerning zoning and looking at our zoning.
Just zoning in general?
Yes.
And here in council chambers?
Here in council chambers, 6:30, yes.
So July 18th at 6:30 PM, Housing, Health, and Recreation Committee meeting about zoning matters. Thank you, Mrs. Hanrahan. Any other new business? Mr. Clark?
Our next citywide prayer meeting will be this Saturday, July 2nd. We have time change this time. It'll be at 10 a.m. At the Norwood Plaza parking lot where we'll have Hope Over Heroin. So I'd like to invite everyone to join us this Saturday at 10 a.m.
At Norwood Plaza parking lot.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark. Any other new business? Mr. Sanker?
Just in the event that people see people working around on a lot of the public street lights, the don't walk lights, some of the poles around the city up and down, primarily in Montgomery Road, they're being painted. And that project is going on right now, and the funding was provided through our community block grant money, so you'll see some of the light poles and that being spruced up and painted. And so when you see that happening, you'll know why, and just don't touch them.
It's been like a 3-year project for the tree board in the making. We finally got enough bids to be able to have them approve the project for us. So, and it is from community development block grant funds. We're not using any city funds, so just make that real clear. So we're really happy about that, Mr. Sanker. Thank you. Is there any other new business? We should congratulate Mr. Clark on the birth of his new daughter. I'm sure would you like to say something about her, other than she's fabulous?
Yeah, she's adorable. Ava Grace Clark was born on Wednesday, June 15th at 11:49 a.m. My wife labored for 36 hours, God bless her heart. So, but she's happy and healthy, and we're just super excited, and it's our first child, so it's a miracle.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Mr. Mumper?
I have an older issue that I should have brought up earlier, but I asked the mayor about Highland Avenue.
I was just going to bring that up, so I'm glad you did. It's still closed.
It's still closed, yes, and it's still being worked on. So I don't know the date when it's going to be open, but everybody's like me. They didn't realize how often they used that.
I agree. Just the other Monday night, I was doing the same thing. So, Mr. Sanker, do you have any information for us?
Well, I do, Madam President. We received a letter being we do our trucks travel on Highland Avenue quite a bit, and we did receive a letter that it was supposed to be a 2-week project, and the initial completion date was July the 1st, so we'll see if that happens by Friday. But that was in the letter that was sent out for traffic issues, July the 1st, so keep our fingers crossed.
We can only hope. Like Mr. Mumper says, I don't think I realized how often I went by there until you drive down and go, oh, I forgot. Thank you for the update, Mr. Sager. Any other new business? Okay, we have no communications. We do have one absent member to excuse. Mr. Mumper,
I move we excuse the absent member.
seconded by Mrs. Hanrahan. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan.
Yes.
Mr. Sanker.
Yes, sir?
Mr. Mumper.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. Mr. Mumper,
Do we want to bring the scouts up and have them introduce themselves?
I'd love that. Would you guys mind coming up?
Where they're from, what they do.
You might want to come up to the microphone, and you probably want to take it out and put the microphone up by your mouth so we can hear you.
And if each one could give us an opinion, we could fight about it.
So if you'll give us your name and where Troop 9 is this one that is sponsored by the Moose? Norwood Moose? Okay.
Hi, my name is Freddie Grubbs.
One of the triplets.
Hi, my name is Mitchell Grubbs.
One of the triplets.
The third one's back there.
There you are.
I am Ian Davis.
There. Parents.
Your parents are here? Welcome. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Prither.
I'll drive you home.
Always get our mixed up.
We have one more scout. He's from Troop 6. His name...
007.
Wait. 007, sorry. Always get the venture and cruise mixed up. He is Kevin Hirsch.
And where is the Troop 007 from?
They are...
Church of the Redeemer?
In here in Norwood?
No.
Is it
Hyde Park.
Hyde Park,
But he's
okay.
a Norwood resident.
Well, good. Welcome. It was not we didn't have much discussion or arguments tonight, but there was a lot of communication that went on, so hopefully you can have enough fodder, if you will, to write your report or your summary. So we're glad you're here. Thank you.
We're trying to go on.
With no other business, Mr. Mumper,
I move we adjourn.
seconded by Mr. Clark. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mrs. Stickley.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanrahan. Mr. Sanker.
Yes.
Mr. Mumper.
Yes.
All members present voting aye, the motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned.